We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Dionna Griffin-Irons. She is a writer, adjunct professor, and longtime former director of talent, diversity, and inclusion at the Second City. Dionna, it's so good to see you. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Christina, for having me. I'm delighted to join AllVoices. I go by she, her pronouns. What did I want to be when I wanted to grow up? Am I grown up now? I guess I'm adult, right? I wanted to be a doctor. At age 8, I wrote a personal declaration on paper that said I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to heal. I wanted to help people and to always be nice. And when I got a little bit older, blood started to freak me out. And so
That's a no-go, yeah.
that's a no-go. But what I realized is that the doctor that I wanted to be was to use art as a way to heal and transform people.
I love that answer. I think it's a really powerful way to help heal and transform people as well, being creative, and also the power of the community that comes from creative folks in general, whatever that means to you too. You mentioned kind of your want to help people and really share that kindness as well. What role has really community in general played in your life leading up to where you are right now?
Wow, community is my lifeline. I've realized throughout my young adult life into I'm a mother now. I have like two sons. I have a 15-year-old and 11-year-old. But prior to that, I knew that community was something that was my extension of my family. And we need these extensions of our families. A lot of us are in the workplace. We're away from our primary family. And so work is an extension of family. It is an extension of community. These are people that we sometimes spend more time with on a day-to-day than sometimes with our spouses or our children. So having that sense of belonging where we connect with one another, we need to bounce ideas off of another person. We need just someone to get what we're doing and not do this work in isolation is huge. And that's what community gives us.
Yeah, community give us those meaningful connections, the sounding board, the kind of constant communication as well, and just the opportunity to learn from one another too, and hear other people's stories as well. I want to ask what the relationship is between community, so something we just touched on briefly as well, improv, and that's really sense of belonging. I also I've only taken like an intro to improv class, but I see some connections there as well, but want to ask your thoughts on that.
Okay, so you have improv, community, and belonging.
Mhm.
Improv is the dessert, the appetizer, the food. It's the food that kind of brings, it's the thing that we're going to commune and that we're going to come together and experience. It's the thing that you want to take a bite of, and that once you take this bite, you're going to be addicted and you want to come back for more and more. So the gathering around the art form or the thing that brings you together, that stickiness. And for me, it's that art form, it's writing, it's improv, is what improv serves. The gathering, that we have this shared mutual interest connection to do this thing together, is the community. And belonging is once you're here, it's like, wow, I want to come back to here. This space that I'm connecting with other like-minded people feels like an extension of myself. It feels like I can call this another home, an artistic home, a corporate home. I feel like I can let my guards down. And that's what belonging in my interpretation you have a sense of knowing and seeing yourself and someone else in a gathered space where you have hopefully taken something delicious that pulls you together.
Yeah, what is that common thread? What is that similar interest or shared interest, let's say, or how do I feel connected to you too, in terms of the reflection of stories, experiences? You mentioned kind of that artistic community or corporate community. You could get both of these from work. You could get one of the other. I want to talk about this kind of dynamic thing of company culture. We know it just doesn't stand still, but belonging and community really have an impact on where we work. I think we spend a third of our lives working, which doesn't include sleep. With all of the changes happening in the workforce, something that has come through is that a lot of folks want to work for a positive company culture where they feel like they belong, can do their best work. Do you think the easiest way to improve upon company culture is to remove workplace issues or anything else?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's like, can I take arguing and conflict out of the home dynamic situation? Absolutely not. I mean, this is where, I mean, everyone wants to come to the space where their buttons aren't pushed and where it's comfortable and they don't have to engage in a way that's uncomfortable for them. But the truth is that we discover who we are when we are challenged. We discover who we really are when we're challenged. So for instance, when I'm teaching, I would love to just go in like, okay, here's my lesson plan, or even when I have a work meeting, here's my agenda. I'm going to hit everything on the agenda and no one's going to disagree with me. Everyone's going to agree. I'm not going to have any pushback, but that doesn't always happen. That's just like the perfect setting. The real teaching and the real negotiation, the real collaboration and ideation among teams is when another person disagrees, and then we kind of go a bit, we have to come together and collaborate. Where do we agree? And it's okay to agree to disagree. So it's more important that it's, of course, no one, even as an instructor, you don't want to have to go into a room and things don't go according to plan, but that's when you have to start pulling out other assets, other gifts that you may have that you can bring to the space and that you can really redefine what you're doing in that moment to reach someone. Everyone doesn't fit into this cookie cutter process. You can't predict someone's behavior, their responses. The best thing that we can do is listen. We can actively listen so that everyone's idea is heard. And how can we move the conversation forward? So we need those issues. We need, the workplace conflict. That's what makes us, unique.
Absolutely. I think in any relationship, conflict is bound to come up. It's the question of, am I prepared to navigate this? What is my intention coming into this conversation? How am I showing up for myself and others? And being able to communicate that too. I definitely don't believe in perfection, but there's also that intentionality behind it as well. In any company you work with, you have your coworkers and team, you have your manager, you have leaders. And I think when we're talking about company culture, leaders sign up for an additional responsibility to be people managers or to be decision makers. What is kind of their unique role in really leading a company's culture, modeling behavior, leading by example?
So let me unpack that sentence. You're saying, what is the manager's primary role? Can you repeat that last one again?
Yeah, what is the unique role of leaders and managers to really lead the company's culture?
I have to think that the unique role is to be present, to be present with another person in a human space, and to provide active listening, ear participation. But it's mostly to be present. Oftentimes, I hear that employees, ensemble members, students, they don't leave necessarily the company. They're leaving leaders and managers. It's not the brick and mortar necessarily sometimes that people are leaving. It's the people it's the managers, it's leadership. It's someone that may have done them wrong, that they don't feel they were either heard, they were visible, they weren't recognized, they weren't appreciated. And so all of those things require for someone to be present and visible to that person. So I think the biggest thing is to be present and know when to use, when to speak and not speak. Sometimes we just have to listen and not say anything at all.
Yeah, I think being present is really important, and that also leads to being agile, being open, actively listening, as you were talking about. And that doesn't mean always taking action right away, or responding or thinking about the next thing that you're going to say either too. It's definitely, and also continuing and following up on the conversation, most of the time, depending on what it is too. A kind of a broader question as well is there a unique kind of role or responsibility for employers in general to create more equity in their local community, and in the world at large as well?
There's always a role. There's always oh my goodness. That the role is, it's always it's inviting people to the table, inviting people over to dinner. I did a Huffington Post interview many years ago, and it's like, I like inviting people to the table to share a meal. Who wants to have lunch alone? Who wants? I mean, it's everyone. I mean, just think about, our fondest memories. It's like, no one wants to sit alone and have lunch. Everyone wants to come to a table. They're looking for a friend where they can join, because, a shared experience is what, pulls us together, the commonality, I get to have this experience and I get to share it with you. We learn from very young that to share with someone. It's like, oh, you have some candy, and then someone sees something that you have, is, oh, can I have some? Can I have some? And to share. And it's great, when you get to have this bond and connect with someone. So I think that making more space at the table, mentorship, volunteers, getting outside of our comfort zone where we can go into different spaces, where we can volunteer and do the work on the ground, and to see what is happening on the day to day in the communities that we're serving. How far does our mission lead? Where does it go? To roll back sleeves and become a part of the solution, not just drafting the mission statement, but being actively involved in it. And that requires an inclusion mindset, where, I want to extend myself to someone else. I see myself, I'm not waiting for someone else to see me, but I see myself first. So, yeah.
Yeah, that inclusion mindset is really important to think about too, whether you're talking about impacting the community, your role as a manager, your role as someone who just came into the company on day 3, let's say, as well. And you pick up on if folks really have that on your team, or if they just have it as part of the mission statement, or it's on the virtual or kitchen wall, but it's not really manifested throughout the organization too.
Right. It is a way of being.
Yeah.
It truly is a way of being. Do you want to play or not play? Do you want to be in the sandbox alone, or are you going to invite people to the sandbox?
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to kind of what we learned as kids as well, in terms of sharing and the tangible and intangible things that we've been talking about too. They don't just happen because you have really great intentions. You have to try and really lean into the conversation, show up for yourself, others in the community too. I was reading through your bio ahead of our interview as well, and I want to ask too, in terms of this work from anywhere, or having the opportunity to move for your job as well, with your experience in talent recruitment, development, and diversity. how are you kind of removing, and how do you recommend others really think about removing barriers to entry for jobs, really opening up accessibility to job opportunities?
How do you remove the barriers? You know, it is a trial and error a trial and error process. But I do believe that the barriers are removed when we are passing the torches, when we are making ourselves available. I had an open door policy. I always had an open door policy, and that was because, you know, if someone just kind of took the risk to kind of show up without an appointment, I know it's not kind of like protocol, but I remember I would, you know, if I didn't have anything booked on my calendar, it's like that. You don't know what that person went through, how many hoops they had to go through in their mind just to kind of finally show up, to push past their fear. It's like, oh, I want to have an appointment with this person. And so I try to have an open door. You know, when I was in the office, I'm not as much in the office. I'm kind of like floating around a lot of different spaces, but I would always have my door open where if someone just stopped by and they wanted to chat, I was around. I was available. If I didn't have anything pressing, I would talk with the person. And I think just small things like that, having an open door policy. I think also the way that you increase accessibility is you have to demystify the myths around your organization, around your industry. And there's a lot of myths out there. So there should be some myth busting. So in my industry, I created auxiliary events that provided information and resources without any charge, and then reached out to communities to invite them in to, here's how you get a casting agent, here's how you get cast in this, here's how you audition. It's kind of like I did the legwork for them. So if you kind of like, you know, do the work, think of the need and the fear that your particular client is holding and possessing, and speak and lead from that direction and build initiatives in programming that addresses the need and the fear. That is a way that you create access into your industry. That's the best way. I mean, that's how a lot of my work stemmed from, is by thinking about the fear. It's like, oh, you know, what's holding people back? And then create initiatives and programming to invite those people in, answer the questions before they're even, some people don't even know that they even have the fear, but so you have to be a bit forward thinking. And what is it that my client or ideal audience member is thinking before they even come into our space? And then you create around that.
Yeah, you have to create and sometimes redesign or rebuild things that you've been using as well when you ask yourselves these questions: who might not be part of this conversation, what are the fears here as well, and consistently, be thinking how you can do better as well, and really work together and collaborate to achieve those goals, to have that inclusive mindset when you're thinking about kind of what you've seen out in the industry or with different employers. So not necessarily at places that you've worked before as well, or clients that you work with. Are there any common mistakes you're seeing companies making with the best of intentions, we could say, also with their inclusion and belonging strategies?
Oh my goodness. You know what the mistake is that, having, been having this role where I've been Director of Diversity, Talent, Inclusion, and Development. This is my former role for 21 years. And what I've learned, and what I'm sure a lot of people with the diversity and inclusion label and title, is that the burden doesn't belong on one person. And companies start to hire, which I think it's a good thing, to have someone, to bring someone in and they give them this title. And of course, this is important, imperative work that is long overdue. It's work that we've been doing historically for hundreds of years under different names: advocacy, outreach, civil rights. All of this work has been happening for many, many, many years. But now we have it under a different label, right? the burden and the problems that you don't want is that this work doesn't belong to one person with that title. This is work that needs to be infused, we know, within the culture, within the community, within the world, right? It's not, oh, I have a lot of magic, but it's not my, it's not, you have a lot of magic, but it's not for us to
No.
use all of this magic and as we have the cure-all
Mhm.
to eliminate all these potential problems that may come up with DEIB, right? Everyone has magic.
Mhm.
Everyone has magic. So the problem is that when we're starting to look at one department, one person to erase and make all of these potential problems or fix everything, where it's a community culture, it's an entire mindset and culture that should exist. Yeah, that's where I think what companies have to be mindful of. It's not this is lifelong. It's not a one-stop fix it shop or process. This is lifelong. And the more that people kind of get around that we are all ambassadors of inclusion, belonging, of access. All of us are ambassadors.
All of us are ambassadors. I love the community effort as well. And it's not Dionna or Christina or one person's job to make sure that, 500 employees or, the entire organization feel like they're included and belong. This is definitely full-time work as well. So investing time, money, and resources is 100% necessary, but being really clear about what the intention is, what the goals are, is just as important too, and making sure that everybody has that ownership mentality. I know I've been asking kind of specific questions around your journey and what you've seen work really well, maybe not so well. Is there anything that I didn't specifically ask that you would like to share with the folks listening? I want to pass the mic back to you with that kind of broad question.
Sure. I think the most important, what I can share with my journey is that I had to come to understanding that my story, my voice, my journey is powerful. It is, that is the path to authenticity, is tapping into your story, the unique aspect that makes you who you are, your origin story, being vulnerable and taking that risk to share that story, to share that truth is it is a superpower that we all have to lean into, and that's like part of the glue that connects all of us. So that's the one thing that I would like to pass on to listeners and to viewers, is that you have a truth inside of you. Everyone has a story. Oftentimes when you go into this world, it can get muddled, and you have to keep finding how to get back to that truth and to be authentic and keep peeling back the layers to reveal your most authentic self, moment to moment.
Keep peeling back those layers and really come into your story, be vulnerable, and help others be vulnerable as well, because we are all in this together and nobody is isolated alone, just, doing what they're doing. We all seek that human connection on some level. Dionna, I really appreciate you being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you for inviting me, Christina. This has been a pleasure. I
Of
love talking about this work.
Of course, I can definitely tell anytime. And as a reminder for folks who are listening at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. I know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we'll talk soon.